maybe. All right. Just hop out here. I'm out in the vegetable garden, and honestly, I just wanted to hop on real quick, give a live view of all the place, everything that we've got growing, and then stuff that we've got going on right now. I guess first off, I'll just set up over here and start with my first chore of today. I've got to do this Florida weave. I got to do a Florida weave on my tomato here. On all of these ones, I've got a single stem method that I use for my tomatoes. And so I've got the vegetable clips. We have a video coming pretty soon in the future on that. But the ones over here, I ran out of material. So instead of doing it like this, I'm just going to do a Florida weave. I've got these ones growing with my beans. I've got bush beans all over here, and then pole beans on this back side that are going to be trellised up using this paneling right here. I am just so happy with the way the vegetable garden looks right now. I'll give you all an overall view real quick. All right. Here is the vegetable garden right now. We've got 9 beds in total. I'm sure you all know that by now. We're growing just about everything in here. We've got beans, tomatoes, so several kinds of beans, several kinds of tomatoes, several different kinds of peppers, broccoli, Romanesco, cucumbers. We're growing cucumbers back there on trellises as well. Then we've got radishes and beets here. The beets are small ones, and then we have a bunch of radishes that I have to pull out of here because they went to flower. It was one specific variety that bolted really quickly compared to the rest. So that was kind of a bummer, but I have a bunch of intercroppings of succession planting for the radishes. So I got to get these big ones out of there so they don't smother them out. We have lettuce, bok choy, kohlrabi. Then back here by this string, this is all peas. My favorite has to be kohlrabi. I think every single year, no matter how many I plant, I always wish that I grew more kohlrabi. So chances are next year we're going to have an entire bed of kohlrabi, probably an entire bed of lettuce, and then we'll be passing it off onto friends. Strawberries, rhubarb, onions, turnips, and carrots here. And then this is all in the making right now. I'll have some videos coming on that in the near future. We just basically laid down all of the grass and weeds that were growing back there, and we're turning it into a cut flower area. So if you think primarily dahlias, ranunculus, gladiolas, stuff like that will be growing over there. And then we have our herb beds back over here. These are our rhubarb, which honestly, I don't know if it's worth the space. I'll probably take the rhubarb and pop it down over by our elderberry soon here, because I don't need them growing in the raised bed. And then I will let the strawberries take over that entire bed instead. The rhubarb leaves are massive, just huge. It's about time to cut all of these out, otherwise they're going to be too old. And then as you can see, they're starting to bolt. I've been cutting those flowers off to encourage more leaf growth and leaf production for us. But first thing I need to do today is just going to be doing the Florida weave on these right here, our tomatoes. So let me go back and get my camera stand again. And as I am doing this Florida weave, I'll just talk to you all about some things that we're doing in the garden. Just a little bit of a garden chat session. And I hope you all are having a great day so far. Feel free to comment in the section down below, have some talks with each other or whatnot. Let's see, set up right there. And then, so real quick, I'll just get this string across, and then after I put the string up, I will then talk to you about our methods with single stemming the tomatoes, why we do it, why I think it's the best way to grow tomatoes, and then I'll give you some close-up shots of exactly how to do that. So first off, let's just get the string going here. I'm going to start up about 1.5 feet off of the ground to begin with for our very first line of weave. I'm growing more tomatoes this year than last year, many more tomatoes as a matter of fact, because I think they're a lot of fun for everybody to grow, to be honest. And I also use up all of the tomatoes that we grow every year. Just like I said earlier with the kohlrabi, seems like we can never grow enough tomatoes. I can always freeze them and make them into pasta sauces later on. And so if we do have too many this year, which we won't, I can still use them for many different things in the garden. So what I'm doing with this is this string's just going to go up here, and as these tomatoes grow, I'll basically be pinching them between these lines, and that's what's going to stop them from leaning over and falling off to the side. Take this one. I'll cut that off there in a second. There's a lot of different ways you can do this, just like with everything in gardening. So don't worry about the exact method. You'll do just fine as long as your tomatoes are growing in this string and they're not going to tip over. You're going to be doing just fine. That's the only goal of growing like this. All right. Okay, one more going across. Oh, whoa. Then I will also likely, in the future here, I'll probably extend these. So right now, about 5 feet tall, like in the bed here. I guess a little bit more than that. Maybe about 5 feet tall, 5.5 feet. But I would like to double this. And so what I will do is I'll grab some more of these seed channels from the store. More of these seed channels from the store and stack them up even higher. And so we can really grow tomato plants that are about 10, 11 feet tall using this method, which is great. I really do like using it. Haven't really used the Florida weave too much. I do usually use this method right here behind us. This is the method that I usually use right here, and that's just using a single drop line and then clipping your tomatoes onto them. So we'll do some contrasting videos on the benefits of using a line like this, a single drop line. Last year we had tomato plants growing 2 feet taller than that. They were about 11 feet tall in total, just massive. But I'll show you the difference between, you know, a Florida weave method and then the results that I get using this method with clipping them on the line too. So real quick, if you're not familiar, I'm sure many of you are at this point if you've seen a lot of my videos, I will show you what we do to single stem our tomatoes. So these are all heirloom varieties. We've got Rooker's tomatoes, we've got Paul, we've Key Purple, and then we have Azoichas as well. They're all heirloom. They all are great producers, produce nice big tomatoes. I would say the smallest out of these are probably going to be either the Rutgers or the Azoicha. The cherry purple tomatoes get huge. We can get like 2-pound tomatoes out of those. So really, really big ones. But all heirloom for sure, like these ones. So to single stem, as you can tell down below, I will cut off the leaf portions as this plant grows up, leaving the fruit sets, obviously, and then making sure that I take off any suckers that we've got. Like this right here, that sucker has got to go. And I will just continuously take these clips and clip up the tomato as it grows and grows and grows and grows all the way up to 11 feet. These suckers are very prolific. I mean, they can pop out of nowhere and grow very, very fast as well. If you want to, you can clone and propagate these. But definitely keep up on them because these suckers will grow into completely new plants, which we want to avoid because we're going to be producing a lot of foliage at that point instead of the single stem, the single very strong, healthy plant that we want to grow. We don't want to grow a bush. We want to grow tomatoes and we want to grow flowers. So we want to make sure this plant is putting all of its energy into those things and not putting its energy into these little suckers. So just by doing that and then trimming up some of this foliage as it grows larger, you could get a lot more production out of them. It kind of seems counterintuitive because you're taking off plant matter, but again, all of the matter that we're taking off is going to be diverting a lot of energy away from the plant producing tomatoes, and instead it's going to want to grow lots of foliage. So let's avoid that for sure. The greatest way to get these suckers is when they're really small, just like that, little ones, before they get big, because trust me, they get big fast. I want to see if I can show you an example of a big one, maybe over on this bed because I haven't done much to it. Oh wow, look at, here we got a little tomato buddy already. And oh, this one, okay, here for instance, this tomato has grown off, and see, we've got a fork right there. So it teed. At one point, this was probably a sucker that I didn't get to, and then it has since teed off. I will continue to grow it like this now that it's so big, but usually you want to catch those before this period. Just cut all that off. Cut that off. I should really get my clippers when doing this. It's kind of hard doing it one-handed. Maybe I'll get the stand really quick. Pop the stand on here. All right. So again, I'm going to go through and cut off some of this lower foliage. And these tomatoes will then start to weave through this line. I am growing these tomatoes in our bean bed. So all of these below here, all this other stuff you see, these are all of our bush beans. I figured I might as well try it. I've got some extra tomatoes to plant, and I think they would be a good thing to team up with and see how they grow. I mean, at one point, I think it would be cool if I could grow pole beans up the single stem of my tomato plants, just as a little experiment to see how they do. Because I love playing with plants and seeing what I can get away with that I really haven't seen before. I just think it's a lot more fun to grow that way. And so that's something we'll be doing here probably next season, seeing if I can get away with growing some pole beans up tomatoes. You know, I'm probably gonna get some plant clips for these ones anyways. All right. Got pretty much all the suckers there gone, except for right here again. This plant it's really liking to fork off into two different plants a lot. For some reason, it's branching out a lot, which is not what I want, but might be that specific variety is more apt to do that than other ones. Just cut a lot of this foliage out of here. Don't need it. Don't want it. Especially the stuff that's close to the ground. If you saw my recent video on how to not get blight on your tomatoes, very important. Got a big fork right here too. So this whole section right here, this was forking off of the plant, and this would have turned into an entire other tomato plant. So like this right here was trying to flower and everything. I don't want that because I'm single stemming. Again, you can do that if you want to. It's definitely easier to not have to single stem. This does take a little bit more work up front, and you do have to make sure you keep up on it. I just saw another sucker back here. You do have to keep up on it a little bit, but in the end, I've always gotten better harvest out of my tomato plants by single stemming them. All Very good. Yeah, I'm definitely going to get some clips for these. It's just, I don't know. I don't like the Florida weave thing nearly as much. Unless you got like some pretty strong line. Just for what I have, it's just nearly as much. How many tomato plants just joining in now? Hi, growing on Vancouver Island. I'll show you exactly. Right now, we've got 10 in this bed. These are all heirloom varieties. I said a little bit earlier, we've got Rutgers tomatoes, Paul Robeson tomatoes, Cherokee purples, and then Azoitia tomatoes. And these were a little bit of leftover. I don't remember offhand, but I have 5 more in here. One little runt that got eaten off when it was little. Are the beds a foot high? Yes, exactly. They're a foot high. I chose to use 2x6s for these garden beds because, believe it or not, using all 2x6s was a lot cheaper than getting 2x12s. And each bed in total, granted, this was before we had the crazy lumber prices that we're seeing now. Luckily, the prices are coming down a little bit. But each bed only cost me about $35 or $36 to make in total. Plus, you got the price of the screws, which is a few bucks there. So I would say all in all, under $40 per bed to use the 2x6s, construction grade, number 2 pine 2x6s. And these have been in the ground here for 3 years now. We've got self-seeding beans all over the place and wild garlic. But these have been in the ground for 3 years. Well, almost 3 years. This will be just about 2.5 years right now. And as you can tell, like there's hardly any decay right here. And people say like, oh, you know, your number 2 grade pine is only going to last for a couple of seasons. You're not going to get your money's worth out of it. Well, if I were to build these beds, 9 of them out of cedar, like that probably would have cost me, I don't know, $1,200, if not probably more. I think I'd be lucky if I could have gotten away with $1,200 to build 9 beds, to be honest. Usually it's about $200 and some dollars per bed to build. I haven't looked at cedar prices lately. I'm sure it's kind of insane, but $40 compared to at least $200 for a raised bed, and you're only gonna get, maybe you'd be lucky if you get double the lifespan. But right now I'm looking at these beds and I think they're gonna last us another 3 years or so at least. And at that point, what I'm probably going to do is just get rid of the beds all in all, like completely, and change this whole area from a raised bed into an in the ground growing space. So I will take the beds out, then fill up rows of soil here. Because what we did is we took this vegetable bed here. This was nothing but grass. I mean, this whole yard, let me step back a little bit. This entire yard, everything, all back here, all this stuff. This was all cedars, giant 25-foot cedars up until this point. This was all grass. Everything else was all grass. So what we did was we cut down the cedars, we built the fence, and then for this vegetable area, this was the most ideal spot because that direction is east. So the sun comes up overhead and then sets down over there in the afternoon. And so this orientation was picked out specifically because the only shade we've got is from these arbovitas in the early morning. Usually they're in about full sun by 9:30. I took some pictures this morning and the only beds that were shaded at 8:20 were these last 3. All of the rest had sunlight on them. So Like as the sun comes across, these arbovitas don't provide a lot of shade at all, which is perfect. And then my rows are set up north to south. So as the sun comes up over them, the rows of vegetables all get equal amounts of sunlight. But what we did was we just took wood chips. You can see we just got some new drops this year so far. We had 2 dump trucks of wood chips dropped off. We put in some here in the vegetable garden, which I need to rake out everywhere in all of these rows. But then all this area back here, that was all just dumped with free wood chips from the city. And so everything and is turning into a really good base for us to grow vegetables in now. And so once these beds start to degrade, if they degrade, I'm probably, well, obviously they're going to degrade at some point, but I'm probably just going to get rid of them and grow in the ground. And it's going to be a lot easier now that we have a good soil base to work with compared to what we had before, where if I wanted to till up the soil that was here natively in the past and grow in it right away, it would have been really difficult to do that, to go from grass to vegetable garden. But now that we've had these, about a foot of wood chips that has been eaten up by the microorganisms, the mycorrhizal fungi, nematodes, all the kind of cool stuff that's in the soil, breaking down the wood chips, turning it into a nutrient dense soil. Now that that's there and established, it's going to be a lot easier to build a good garden in the future. So I'm not too worried about if these last another 3 or 4 years and then break down. Ultimately, the cost was so much cheaper to grow this way compared to building seed or anything like that. Due to I must have raised beds now. Yeah, raised beds are very helpful in many ways. I think it's easier to amend the soil. It's easier to make sure that each bed is maybe a little bit different in pH if that's something you're looking for. It's easier for weeding purposes. One thing that it's not quite as good for when growing in raised beds compared to not is going to be moisture retention. And then if you're in an area that gets really hot also, that can make it difficult because the raised bed will get a lot hotter than growing right in the soil would. Yeah, I must have been buffering pretty bad here. Anthony, you had a question on how many beds and what is the square footage. I answered how many beds. We've got the 9 beds, but then all of these beds are 8 feet by 4 feet. So I just took all of the 2x6 by 8s and cut them in half for the sides. And then, so in total, we used 6 2x6s for each bed right here. They are growing really well. I know M.I. Gardner made a post on his garden really recently. He said he was extremely happy with the way it's looking. I think we're in just about the same growing zone, although it seems like he had really warm temperatures just as soon as we did. But I tell you what, ladies and gents, our garden is looking so incredible right now for the second week of June. We're in prime time for a lot of this stuff too. Our turnips are starting to really shape up. I have had many harvests of these radishes out of here. I do need to get, so this is the radish that was not so good. These ones, it's a new variety that I'd never grown before. And I forgot what they were called, but it's some type of black radish. But unfortunately, all of that variety of radish, I'm never Never gonna grow it again. It's like a really old heirloom variety, but it did just horrible. I've never had radishes do that before, where they bloomed extremely quick. And so I've got to pull a bunch of these out and then let my other radishes start taking up the space. Ugh. They're basically unedible right now at this point. I'll be able to use them. If I wanted to, I could use these. The flowers are edible. Very good, actually. And I could use that for the chickens. I could use the radish greens as well. But not happy with that variety. On the other hand, we've got all of these ones. I have harvested, I don't know, maybe 60 some radishes out of this bed so far, because we've had multiple plantings, and every time I pull out some radishes, what I'll do is I'll come in with seeds right behind them and then plant those seeds. So that way I have a continual circle of life going with those radishes. Not these ones. These are horrible ones. See, just a pity. I am never going to buy those radishes ever again. Ladies and gentlemen, just stick to your good old red radishes, your white icicles. Your producers that you know are going to do well, and the ones that you've grown in the past. So much. Here on the channel, I'm at a point where I'm trying to figure out what kind of videos you all like the most. I know the how-to videos are basically 300 out of the last 450 or 60 videos are all how-to. But I think that it's about time that I start developing a more in-depth relationship with you all about the stuff that I have going on in the garden and different aspects of our lives and things that we're going through as well, instead of just how to plant your carrots or how to single stem your tomatoes or how to feed chickens with dandelion. All of those videos are great to produce. I do love doing them, but I think I'm going to start including some more content. Make sure it's still. I think I'm going to start including more content on the channel that is story based, where I'm talking to you about the things that we do throughout the day to make this garden run. Because right now, the hardest part about having a YouTube channel and then growing in the garden as well is that I want to make a video about everything I'm doing before I do it. I want to talk about every little thing and show you how to do it. So if I can start including that in my videos, including that in my stories, then I think it's going to be better for all of us. And it's going to be a great way to include a more in-depth connection with you as a community, because I think that's overall a more important thing to develop than just how-to content. So here on the channel, we're going to be looking to develop that more in the future. And I will be making a post on Facebook soon here. Get in a different spot. Make sure you all can see me okay. And I'll be making a post on Facebook as well as a post on YouTube to see and to get your feedback on if that's the sort of content that you like. Basically, I believe that I can find enough people who agree with who I am and who agree with my lifestyle to follow me, to follow my family through all of the things that we're going through. And that's going to establish a stronger community as well. I hope you all start connecting with each other also in the comment section down below and on our community pages on Facebook, all that kind of stuff. The more we can get involved that way, I think the better for all of us. The faster you'll be able to see us move out of this property, get a new place with several acres where we can get some goats, some pigs, maybe a beef or two, some more chickens than just these 5 chickens, and start to see us build a cut flower garden for selling at farmers markets, maybe tapping some maple trees, all the kind of stuff that comes along with having more property. That's our ultimate goal, and that's what we're really striving for in our lives. And I feel like God has really pushed us to build more of a community over the last few months than I've been focused on recently. So if that sounds good to you all, I really hope that we're moving in a positive direction with that stuff. I think we are, for sure. I think we're starting to develop some people who have thankfully, been viewing this channel for a long period of time, and I really appreciate it. I love hearing comments from people over and over again in multiple videos. It feels like such a blessing to me to have people that are learning how to grow, learning how to garden, and not necessarily just sticking to the status quo when it comes to gardening, because there's so many different things that you can utilize in your garden that is you won't find it online. You're not going to find the sort of experiences that you'll get from watching a YouTube channel like mine over a long period of time. You're just not going to find that sort of information on articles, because I show you guys that gardening is so situational. Gardening has no rules, because everything is going to be different when we're gardening. We're going to have so many different factors, and there's so many different ways to grow our vegetables, to grow our plants, grow our flowers, all kinds of ways that we can make the experience easier, faster, more sustainable, and just more fun overall. We can make it a fun experience as well. Gardening doesn't have to be about the rules, and in fact, it should not be about the rules whatsoever. As soon as we got caught up with the rules of gardening and the worry about how to do it, then we're disconnected from the very reason why we should be gardening in the first place. We're gardening for a connection to nature, a connection to God, a connection to the things that bring us life, the things that create life as well. And if we're stressed out about how to do this or how to do that, then we're disconnected and pulled away from that thing in the first place, which has hopefully attracted us to gardening. It attracted me to gardening, to see my grandparents out in their garden and being able to take time to themselves in a peaceful atmosphere. That is something that I saw as a young kid growing up, and I understood that it had value in their lives, and I saw that it should have value in mine also. Make sure we're still going here. I saw that it could have a lot of value in my life, because a lot of people unfortunately live a life of extreme busyness where we're going from point A to point B to point Z just like that, without taking time to stop and think. And that's what it's all about for me, because I, as a person, I have a hard time sitting down and not doing anything. I have a hard time even reading books at some points of my life. I feel like I haven't read a book in far too long. I do try and read the Bible as much as I can and reflect on the things that I learn through it, because it is a living word, in my honest opinion. But I have a hard time doing that. I have a hard time sitting down. And so what I get out of gardening is more than just creating vegetables or just making flowers to look at. Gardening to me is the experience. It is the all-encompassing mentality that you have to have behind gardening in order to have a successful garden as well. And besides that, I love teaching. I love seeing how many people were able to show that gardening doesn't have to be stressful. It can be a fun thing. It can be experimental. It doesn't have to be all about the rules. And some of my videos have hundreds of thousands of views. So to be able to see that, hey, I possibly helped plant 560,000 pounds of potatoes through the views on my 5-gallon potato bucket video. Stuff like that is so rewarding to me because I see that it's returning to your lives, and you're hopefully able to take my videos and build your passion for growing. That's a tagline that I've been using a lot recently because I think it really encompasses what I try to do. I try and build your passion for growing. I try and show that it's a fun experience. It's great for everybody. It's good for your health. It's good for your mental well-being also. And it shouldn't be something that drags you down. It shouldn't be something that you stress out about, even though I stress out about things like these radishes that we just looked at earlier, that just they were absolutely the worst producing radishes that I'd grown my whole life. And it was the first time that I grew that variety. So I learned, you know what, I'm probably not going to grow this variety in the future. I'm going to stick to what I know works well, and the different techniques that I know how to grow them, I will utilize in my garden. But as far as that new variety, I'll probably just never grow it again. So instead of worrying about all of the space that I maybe used up for those radishes in particular, even though, like I said earlier, we've harvested about 50 plus radishes already this year because we've been succession planting them, I have to look away from what didn't work, understand why it didn't work, and just kind of move on and take that as a learning point. Um, I need to focus on removing that stress, getting it out of the way, dealing with it, coming to a head with it, and then just letting it go instead of worrying about it for a long period of time or trying to wonder, what did I possibly do wrong? I know a lot of different things that we're doing really, really well. And no matter how long you've been gardening, real quick, I want to make sure it's still running here. No matter how long you've been gardening, you're going to come across situations where you fail. Like, there's going to be straight up failures in the garden, and that's okay. Don't let that stop you from gardening in the future, because over time, throughout your own experience, you will see what works for you, what sort of cool little tips and tricks that you come up with on your own to make your garden just overall a better place, a more productive place, and a happier place overall. I think that's what we should really be striving for here in the garden. I am so happy with how we've been able to transform this backyard from nothing but grass into an area that is producing a large portion of our produce consumption throughout the summer months. And then we're able to create beautiful things like this willow tree back over here. Oh, you can see it. That willow tree we grew from a cutting just last year, and now it is about maybe 9 or almost 10 feet tall at this point. We're able to build stuff like that in the garden and create life from things that were not there. The grass that was here, I hate it. I can't stand grass. I wish I could turn my entire backyard, except for where the kids play, into just a wildflower prairie if I could. I wish I could do that in my front yard. I think we are going to expand our front yard garden as well, to just kind of make a statement out there for other people who are driving by, that you don't have to have these big green grass yards that are just full of nothing but death, compared to growing flowers, growing clover, wildflowers, cut flowers, sunflowers, apple trees, pear trees, all kinds of things that you can grow in your front yard, that's going to be returning life to the areas around it. The flowers that bloom feed the pollinators, which then feed us ultimately through this entire chain. This whole ecosystem works together. And grass, in my opinion, I always go on these rants in my videos if you haven't seen one before. we're about to go on one, or we are going on one. I won't continue for too long, but grass is nothing but death to me. So many people spray pesticides and spray herbicides all over it. They spray chemical fertilizers, which are also harmful to the ecosystem around them. Um, and pollinators are getting killed by the things that they spray on their yard. Pollinators are not getting fed because it's just grass. It's just this dead area, lifeless area, compared to if we were even growing stuff like clover, which produces beautiful flowers instead of this ryegrass and bluegrass, all the other types of grasses that people grow. If we utilize different native flowers instead, or even perhaps planting our own gardens in our front yards or backyards as much as we could instead of growing grass, would make a huge difference. And then the amount of gasoline, the amount of fuel, the amount of time that is taken, the resources that are taken on these yards, these green carpets in people's properties, it's just honestly it breaks my heart to see so much being utilized for it. And yes, I do have yard too. Like here, if y'all look at all of this, my kids play in all of this. They really do. I have grass myself, but I also turned this entire area from grass into life. I'm turning this entire back area here from grass into life. My chickens there are providing life. All of these things that we've created in the backyard here are returning life and abundance to the ecosystem instead of something that is simply not creating life and not creating abundance. So that's what I try and build these gardens for. And part of why they're so rewarding to me is just what they provide to the ecosystem, my health, my well-being, and hopefully your health and well-being also. With that being said, I'm gonna check out for the day. I've got to get inside. It's getting a little bit late here. I still got some other stuff. I got some videos I have to edit tonight. I want to thank you all so much for tuning into the live stream. I hope it was fun for you all. I know it was kind of long. I didn't really get into much discussion with this stuff. It wasn't a Q&A video or anything like that, but thank you so much for tuning in tonight. We've got several videos lined up. We've got a greenhouse tour lined up. We've got a video on tomato plants coming up here. We've got a video on what else did I do? Oh, on creating all of these mulch beds. And then we have another video on grow lights coming up as well. So lots of videos stacked up. I literally don't even have the time to edit them. I could basically be producing a video every single day and I still wouldn't run out of content this time of the year. So stay tuned. Thank you so much for watching. Happy gardening, and we'll see you around. I hope your gardens are doing well also. Before I just keep on talking forever like I usually do, I'm checking out. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.